Welcome to another conversation with Ilan Stephani, my dear friend, body researcher, author, somatic explorer. I'm so happy that you reached out to me and wanted to discuss some things that we both feel very current in the field of talking about trauma integration, collective trauma. And so welcome, my dear. Another.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
It's interesting because when I got to know the term trauma, I was like frozen when we talked about trauma, and now I feel uplifted because what now exhausts me is small talk. And I think we all choose small talks in some situations because we are afraid of depth and of trauma. And now it's like, hey, let's meet and talk about trauma and creativity. And I feel so nourished by going together and not alone into depth. And I'm curious about also touching with words something that is below words. It's not about words. It's something that makes us speechless.
Yeah, and that's, the speechlessness is something that I experience so often when, especially like coming forward with my own projects and how do I speak about it? And this is exactly, it's like why, trauma comes up in weird ways and weird symptoms, that are unexpected. And I'm lacking of words, and I'm just like, oh goodness, how can I find the right words? And then there's this perfectionist who wants to have the really the right frequency of the word, so to really make it clear.
And to some extent, I think it's a mission impossible because our mind and our language wasn't created in the depth of what runs our lives. It like language happens in our everyday and official and mature consciousness, and we know that this is a very shallow layer of neurons, and the basic powers that run my life and my real decisions are irrational. They are underneath words and justification and everything like that. So it's interesting because I don't hope that we find the word that hits the point, but hits towards the point. And I think this is the best as language can get into depth.
And also it's always behind what's said behind the energy behind the words, it's like when I remember that. And I guess, like the struggle with words really has like I'm better with like talking in images, so or letting my soul speak to me in images, so it's not like so because then I can feel the frequency, and then it can I can translate it in words, but it doesn't need to, it's like part of myself can directly experience, a certain whatever wants to come through. That's I feel like such a magic that I'm so grateful that it came to me a couple of years ago.
And it's really owning your unique expression of the moment, your unique expression of the pain and of the fear and of the hope and everything like that. And I think as soon as I use a word that a few billion people have used before. So I have the whole bunch, the whole field, the whole morphogenetic field of information and association around it. And with something that you draw and paint, there is, let's say, more dignity to the speechless core of the energy that we are talking about.
Yeah. And I find it also, lately with, I appreciate social media it has helped me to have a voice, like to share in a very safe environment. So I'm not like, for me, it's like, I get overwhelmed with like, if the room would be full of people, let's say, or I used to. So social media has been like a good bridge. But I'm finding myself now at this moment when, a deeper healing needs to happen. I need to let go of these, when you try to learn the bicycle, you have these little helper wheels feels, to let go of them and to come back into like real life connection. I mean, I love online work. It has been enabling me to do and to spread my message, and I know where my next edge is. So
yeah.
And when I'm saying, why I mentioned that the social media is like, when I'm reading things there, sometimes you just, you're not, often we're just catching some words and we don't really know what context they're coming from. We don't know who's saying it. So there's so much misunderstanding also when people just read a few words that you just said and they're like, no, that is very generic or whatever they say. I mean, I feel like that's such a, what you mentioned in the beginning, lack of depth, that I'm so craving for and that I feel like I need for healing to happen.
Yeah. And at the same time, social media are a good playground or warm up.
Absolutely.
For also tuning into the intensity of contact, because I think everybody wants to be more alive in her or his life. And everybody is afraid only due to trauma, because trauma shrinks our capacity and tolerance for intensity in life way before we have pleasure in intensity.
Yeah.
And I think social media give us an opportunity to get in touch with real problems and real issues and real energies, but in a safe distance.
Exactly.
So I love this term of safety, because safety is the main ingredient for healing trauma. It's not pushing myself, but having a safe distance.
Yeah.
And I'm also fascinated by, I used to think that the digital world is a dissociated world and the physical world is real. And now, like, I disagree with my former opinion, because I think through social media and the whole internet, we are building right at the moment, everybody with every use and not use of the internet, a collective nervous system. And it reflects something so well back to us. How do we interact? Everybody is a cell in this nervous system. And yes, we have 50% of pornography in the internet, and we have 50% of pornography and close-ups and stress in our own nervous system. There is something so accurate. Without blaming us, there is a deep, like, unconscious attempt of mankind of connecting through social media. Of course, I show my pretty face and I have 5,000 Facebook friends and everything of that is surface. But why? Because I tell the truth. Love me. Let me feel safe with you. And this is so innocent in its core. So there's something where I think our healing capacity of the internet for also individual trauma healing we don't know it yet. We will get to know it. But I think it's a real potential of the internet and of social media.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. And in my own life, that's what I feel like has been the past years for me. And there's some shift happening. I'm not sure what it is exactly, and as you said, how it can look like that. For me, it's like a combination of both. So that we have this opportunity to meet people, that in the world, and exchange and see. Oh, at the core, we're quite similar.
Yeah.
And I also love like coming together. It's like my craving is for it's like for community. And I have experience with communities, good and bad, but I don't know. There's something physical, combining the both that makes it very.
And we can't replace touch, and we can't replace being listened to by a real human being that really looks into my eyes when I cry.
Exactly. Yeah.
We can't replace it.
Yeah.
There is no safe version. Like, when I want to be alive, I will have the fear and I will have the trembling and I will have the doubt. And if I want to shortcut that, I won't get to any real intense point of gratitude for being alive.
Yeah. Mm. 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 Yeah. Mm. Yeah, and I think that's the part that, a couple of days ago was like coming to me. Most of us have trauma, yeah, in some form or another. And when, like in my field or in my, it's like when people have trauma, or like for myself as well, it's like when we talk to each other, so we're looking how can we really see each other, it's like we wear these glasses, I mentioned to you before, it's like it feels like I'm wearing glasses and the prescription isn't right, so it's hard, like that's how it feels when it's like looking at the world through a trauma, whether I'm aware of it or not. And the other one looks at me maybe at the same way. So how can we ever see each other? I can't take the glasses off. I don't see it. So it's like, wow, how are we finding our ways to truly start seeing each other? I don't know. What are your thoughts on those?
I think since trauma is something that costs a lot of energy to hold on to, it is some kind of energetic stress. And I think the term of safety on every layer possible is a very good guideline for dealing with my own trauma. So one thing that relaxes me a lot is this isn't about really seeing you. It's just about seeing you one layer more. And then the next layer, and then the next one. And to be honest, I think everybody has trauma in a civilized culture. I think it's not possible to survive our school system, for example, without getting into some kind of trauma stuck way of breathing and not moving and thinking instead of feeling, and instead of being intensely alive and free in my movement and expression. And I think after this kind of school trauma or cultural trauma, we are so addicted to how do I do it right? And when where is the truth? And even truth is such a stressful term.
Yeah.
So let's relax all of that and just play with, okay, the two of us always meet in this manner. Let's shift into another manner, even with more errors, even with more, I don't know, but let's just get back our movement in the range of how we see each other. And I think this is a very friendly term, or friendly project, instead of, oh, I have to do it right and I have to see your truth. And to be honest, the moment I really see you, I think I see something that I would call spiritual or holy or pure love. So this is not about us being 1 centimeter apart from enlightenment. This is us as human beings and playing in a field where nobody has to hide that we are all wounded. We are all wounded.
Right.
And at the same time, trauma is not a sickness. It's not an enemy. It's not per se a problem. I think what makes trauma that problematic is that we fear it and that we don't have any education around how to give safety to each other. And yeah, I mean, you mentioned it in the beginning that so many so creative pieces of work and creative expressions, they come from trauma. They come from something that outbursts because I don't want to hold on to it anymore. And trauma is such a good school for courage and
Absolutely.
for depth instead of small talk.
Yeah, and I also feel like if you're really consciously going about, like, you know, looking at trauma in your, like, looking at the trauma in your life, I have a feeling it's it's a soul initiation to be, you know, to create change, you know, create change for yourself, but create change on a collective level, on a global level. And you know, somebody mentioned when I talked about this, you know, it's like the Buddhist way of, like, yeah, we all come here, you know, taking on suffering to do something with it. And there's some people who do stuff with it that is even more destructive. And there's some people who, who create really, you know, change that benefits people and the earth. And when I had the idea of, it wasn't an idea, it was like a calling to create the art of revealing, and the program, you know, like the mentorship that I'm bringing into the world is really, I have a block right now. Interesting. I just mentioned it and I'm like, whoop, forgot everything. So classic. Yeah, that's fear.
Initiation. This was a prompt of.
Yeah, initiation. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was about change. You know, it's like change makers, you know, because I felt like if you really look at your trauma, it's like it gives you so many keys of why you're here, and your potential of, you know, it's like, especially with people who are healers and transformers and artists, you know, it's like to make it very concrete why you're here. Looking back at, you know, it's like what life has, you know, given you in an experience, and what, you know, makes you mad, you know, what makes you, what, you know, it's like wound, you know, it's like if we're able to really receive the gift of it, and that might sound really strange to some people, you know, it's like, what's the gift in, you know, it's like rape or something like that. But I truly believe that as a soul, you know, it can be an initiation into like transformation on a global level. And that's something that's dear to my heart, that people can see, you know, it's like receive also the gift, the keys for any project they want to do in the world, to receive that.
Yeah. I think every trauma spot in my nervous system has this subtitle of I didn't survive. I was too weak. I think this is some possible definition of trauma. I didn't come back to my wholeness. And then when I encounter this information, I turn it into quite the opposite of I'm so resilient that what really defines me and my power, it can't be destroyed. It can't be too weak. Trauma is too weak. I'm so strong. And this is not about me being strong, and this is not about muscles, and this is not about men or women or whatsoever. It's really about an inner, like a focus that channels my energy in a way that nobody around me channels his or her energy if not in touch with their own trauma. Because trauma, it runs your life anyway. What you avoid, what you feel drawn to, what you're addicted to, all of this are symptoms of trauma and struggles with trauma healing in a conscious way, in a therapeutic way, and in an unconscious way. But anyway, and I think an important point in the first place is there is no justification on earth for abusing another person in a sexual way or non-sexual way. There is no justification, but it can initiate you to your own power, even though. So it's not about, oh, trauma is good. It is hell. Trauma is death. But you can turn it into something that makes you even more alive. And the sentence that I love so much is, if you want to take revenge, the best revenge on earth, is growing stronger by trauma, instead of believing that you are weak. So there is this, like the flipping coin of death or life, and really traveling towards the core of trauma is something that allows you stop wasting time in your life for unalive stuff, because you lose the fear of death, because you know that your death information somehow was a misunderstanding within yourself. And I think this makes people with a strong connection to their own trauma these good change makers, because they say, of course you laugh about me, of course I'm not normal, of course you say that I'm weird, but that's my pride, and I'm not here to be normal, and I'm not here to wait. I see your fear in your eyes when you judge me. And I think this is only a quality that people can have from trauma. I think they don't learn it at school. At least I didn't learn it at school, but I grow into this direction by stop making any kind of secret from being traumatized and being wounded. Mm-hmm. And nowadays I'm called courageous all day long. And I think it's not courage. It's not a character trait. I'm a coward, but there is a focus that dealing with your own trauma imprints or gives back to the nervous system. And when we are natural in our nervous system, we are fucking courageous. We are so courageous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting that courage moment, it's like, is courage the antidote to fear? I don't know, it's like they always coexist, I think. Mm-hmm. And also, I wouldn't, like, people call me courageous, and I'm like, really? I mean, I can see that, sure, I can own that in part. But yeah, there's always, as you said, I'm terrified as well.
Yeah, like, and I think courage from within is more about surrendering to where your life force wants to flow.
And also about curiosity. For me, it's like curiosity also.
Yeah. And I think this is life force. It's when we are born, we are so curious. Yeah. I mean, everything is it's an adventure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I think that, like, from in my life, I think because I was curious, what if,
Yeah.
And I was like making little steps, sometimes big steps, but more like the little ones. When I felt like, oh, maybe the world is, there's more that I can do, Yeah. It was feeling so liberating, traveling, especially like traveling alone, and even like I'm traveling alone in the world, or I'm just going out, it's like last night I was going to the Reeperbahn in Hamburg, because a friend had a birthday, and I was like, I couldn't take my bike because whatever, so I had to walk. And it's interesting what I'm feeling when I'm doing it. I was like, yes, I can do that. I want to do that. It's like I want to feel free, but also there's a part of me that registers like, oh, somebody's walking behind me, and am I safe? It's like this constant, am I safe?
Yeah.
And yet I'm doing it. It's not like I don't want this to imprison me more than part of me already is. So it's like, and when I travel, it's like the curiosity or that a calling that I feel. It's like I want to honor that calling more than I want to give into the fear.
Yeah.
Yet, it's like fear is also good to take seriously.
Yeah. I think regarding the term fear, we really need a distinction, because we use one word and we call opposite things fear. Okay. One thing is a signal in the nervous system, and the other thing, and this is what most people misunderstand or misinterpret as fear, is their reaction to fear in order to not feel it. And I think this makes it stuck. Fear is an energy of movement. And what we call fear is, I'm afraid, so I don't breathe. But if you stop breathing, you stop breathing not because of fear, but because of your resistance to the energy of fear. And this is quite another thing of you traveling alone, all of your fear in your luggage. And that's great because you will need it in some situations. But you keep breathing. So you are afraid and you are free. It's not fear that imprisons us. It's our resistance to fear. I don't like the word resistance, but our fear of our fear, our contraction against fear. This is what makes fear something that gives us the wrong advice in both directions. Oh, you can trust him, or oh, you can't trust him. In both directions. But fear in the core is something so accurate by our nervous system. I mean, we studied for millions and billions of years how to read our environment and how to react in a way that keeps life going.
So would you say, like, because when we had trauma, like what we are afraid of might not actually be something dangerous, in this moment, but it's like it's that trace back, so we're still connected to that original thing if it hasn't resolved. Would you call this fear, or how would you call it when you experience something in the here and now that makes you contract, let's say that? Is that a reaction to not feeling it, also wanting to?
I would call it fear, because I think we tend to say this is from my past, but that's not quite accurate. For my nervous system, it's right now.
Yeah, for sure.
It is fear. So to me, on the somatic layer, it doesn't exist. This is my past, and this is my presence, and this is my future. It all happens right now. So, and I know, for example, from myself, I used to be very harsh with myself. Oh, Ilan, this is a projection. You shouldn't be afraid right at the moment because you know that it's a trigger from your past. But in the end, this is not helpful. This is even hard with myself, and being hard against myself, I learned it in trauma and not in a healing setting. So, for example, or let's say in a practical way, if I'm afraid, no matter for the moment why I am afraid, just keep breathing. This is the first step. Realizing something is here that makes me want to contract, and something in myself is so wise and intelligent and strong that it wants to keep breathing. And I practice keeping breathing. And then the compliment is that the fears grow stronger, because it needs my breathing and my moving in order to be the strong movement information. And then if I allow that, it will become very clear for me. Is this a projection of my past and I'm really safe at the moment? Or is there something unsafe in the current situation? So it's not only helpful to say, oh, it's a trigger from my past, so today it's everything okay. Who knows? There is a trigger. Why? A trigger isn't stupid. A trigger hints towards something that might be, where it might be important to have a close-up. And it's also easy, let's say you are afraid of something that I say. It would be so easy for me to say, hey, okay, Avi, but we talked about your past and blah, blah, blah. And that's such a comfort zone for me, because I don't have to inquire something within myself of what did I do in order to scare you. And I do like the thesis. I don't know if it's true always. I like the thesis, if a trigger from the past comes up, it is right. There is something here that is not from the past and not from an individual and not from the other, but there is something where it always is right for the present moment. And this present moment isn't, we are not conscious about, what we can learn to get conscious about. And I think one thing that I love the most in talking about trauma and with people who deal with their trauma is their consciousness.
Say again the last word, I didn't hear it.
Consciousness.
Consciousness.
The level of consciousness, it's so nourishing. Being with people who really are used to inquire things that they are not aware of in order to get aware of it. Mm-hmm. I love this humility.
And there's the curiosity again.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Even curiosity is the self-love part and humility is the ego part. Okay. Yeah.
Let me get it again, so I can really feel it. I heard you say, when I'm afraid in the moment, to keep breathing, right?
Yeah.
And then did you say, like, if I keep breathing, then the fear becomes more, or how did I not hear that right? And then I can
say I am more aware of my fear. The great seduction of trauma patterns is I can make it go away. We call it suppression. We call it putting it into the shadows, so I'm not aware of it. The less I breathe, the less I'm aware of the fear. But to some extent, in this very moment, I'm feeding the fear in the most effective way. Yeah. It is stored in my cells, and I know it on some level. So when, let's say, you are asking a question to me and I'm afraid of being so exposed or revealing so much, and then I feel the fear and then I stop breathing. In this moment, I suppress it. But by suppressing it, I become more and more afraid in a level of energy that has a deep impact of my life. And after our conversation, I will wonder why I'm so tired. And this is not an intelligent question, because I did everything I could in order to suppress my life force. And when you ask the same question, and I feel, okay, and shame comes up, and I'm sweating, and sorry, I need to shake for a moment. This is so scary. Then I feel, a rush of energy through my system. And then I might think, oh my God, this is really scary for me. But it isn't, because I keep breathing and I keep moving. And I think the best medicine against our reaction against fear is breathing and shaking at the same time. And after a while, yes, feeling or sensing my body at the same time. So 3 factors. But for the beginning, it's okay. It's enough if you just shake and keep breathing, because everybody around you stops breathing when fear comes up. And when you go like a surfer into this wave of fear, after that, you are so relaxed. You are so peaceful, also with yourself. And this is something I love about somatic coaching, because there are so many questions. Does it work? Why does it work? When will it work? When will it have healed me? And the only answer in somatic coaching is do it. We are in our Western mind. We want to know where we are getting before doing the first step. And somatic coaching is about action. It's about breathing. It's about trying. It's about play and curiosity. So I love this somatic level of dealing with my trauma in an everyday lifestyle that has to connect me back to my body.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you just talked about what that wave, and that I assume, like, doing this consciously. If you don't do it, what happened to me is that there's some other forces doing it for me. It's like I just remembered, when I had this night where I felt like this shaking and sweating, and I couldn't control my body. So it was, and what I remember is like breathing.
Yeah.
So the only thing that I could actually do, that wasn't, it's like, I didn't have the recipe in my mind. Breathe and do this and that, but it was really like a knowing, concentrate on my breathing.
Yeah.
And after that, I was very relaxed, but my system was completely down. So I needed a week to recover. But I just wanted to mention that the body is so intelligent. It's like
and it's tricky, because how I called it, it's like keep breathing and your body doesn't want to breathe, and keep moving and your body doesn't want to move, and that's wrong. It's keeping breathing and moving is a technique that wants to go underneath of any technique and just allowing the body what it naturally wants to do.
Yeah, I had no chance, I didn't, say, oh, let's move, let's breathe.
Exactly. So these other forces, they are the real forces. Mm-hmm. And in the end, they are the healing forces.
Very scary also.
I forced my trauma to heal. No, I stopped blocking the flow of self-regulation by breathing and moving as if this would be a method. But it's not a method of a human being. It's a method of mammals. It's since billions of years. It's the medicine for getting rid of any stress that got stuck in the system. Yeah, and I hear you, and that's a lot. A nightmare, and then keeping breathing. I mean, it's easy to talk about fear when it's not there on the surface, but keeping breathing when you are afraid is a whole another story. And that's, I love this intense reality. I love this, this intensity.
Yeah, it wasn't, for me, it was very intense, because it's that, what you called before, like a surrender, it's like my head was freaking, like, something in me was freaking out because it couldn't control it.
Yeah.
Which kind of sort of created another fear, but and there was also something, a deeper knowing that I knew how to surrender to, which, I guess was coming in helpful. It's interesting. There was something else that you mentioned where I had under curiosity, but it's gone in a moment.
I do know another thing that I would love to point out, or where I want to take a prompt from you. It's about, I was afraid because I realized that I do not have any control. And I think when we really go through the wave, as you did, for example, we return to our everyday routines with a knowledge that we never control anything. Mm-hmm. We are just breathing that little that we can live in the illusion, the collective illusion that most of the time I'm in control. And this is so nourishing around trauma healing. You come back to the surface as in a way of functioning in your life, like caring for your children and all of these like beautiful things. But you do it with less overestimation of your contribution to that. You do it with less effort. Mm-hmm. Because you somehow meet in trauma, not trauma and problem and exception, but you meet some true statements about life itself, about you can't control. You are never in charge. It's just if you agree to being in touch with this truth or not. And so I love also from trauma, that is such a strong spot of resistance to what happened to me in those days. I love how this is a school for surrendering. The thing that I did the less in those days, I can do the best today because my trauma taught me. And this is something interesting that makes people also more relaxed. And I think I also grew more relaxed in contact with other people, because I used to be very like strict and rational and let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. And now I so deeply know this is not something to talk about. I mean, might be, but talking is overestimated, like in a general way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For me, it's like talking. Well, there's like there's different ways. It's like talking can be great if you not used to it. Just to talk about what happened to you, if that's something. Yeah. Just needs to come out. It's different for other people, need to talk about other things, but I think it's just a door in. It's the first for many people to, for me at least. I remember like for the longest time I was hoping somebody would ask who else had gone through sexual abuse and rape, and I was hoping somebody would ask the question so I can raise my hand and be seen, and the whole thing that happened with me too, that was kind of that thing that I was waiting for before, but for me it was already way past, but this invitation to just signal, or and I think there's power in using, voice, and it doesn't have to be words, it can be sounds. I also work with sounding, which is super healing for me, like super grounding also. It's something, again, I have no control over, but I'm giving, I surrender in, it's like whatever it wants to come through to be expressed, and then go deeper with it. It's like, I do believe there's healing in sharing our story, and sharing our message, and sharing our journey with whatever happened.
Most definitely. And I think it's like, in the term of fear, we need to distinct here between talking and separating myself by talking from the body, and by talking from the energy, or connecting with my words to my energy. And I think if there is any sense on earth in talking and language and words at all, it is using words as a portal for my energy. Right. And then it's incredibly healing. But we learn so much mental talking that is defined by being dissociated from the body, that it's tricky, because then I tell the same story again and again. And talking is deeply physical. Talking uses a part of my body that is innervated by the vagus nerve, that is so crucial for healing trauma or holding on to it. So there is something beyond making sounds, what gives back vibration to stuck or frozen parts of my body. There is something where words even more can express how it was for me, and not for you, and not for the other party, and not for my mind, but for my soul and for my body. There's something so nourishing. And if we manage to go to the energetic and somatic talking, this is incredibly healing. And I think even something for many things or stories that are suppressed in this culture, it's quite essential. Because so many trauma that we carry with each other, they didn't come from me falling from my bicycle. They come from me being traumatized by other humans. And so to some extent, for healing that, I have to return to the place of being real with real humans and making a good experience instead of a bad experience again. Right. So there is something where we really need somebody who says, I hear you. Wow. Yeah. I hear you. I'm here with
you. Absolutely. This is exactly why I want to, create that mentorship program, whatever, it's like, I call it EmpowerMentorShip now. Yeah. It's really a vessel for people taking a journey together and creating.
And it's always this togetherness that scares us the most. So I know that for so many years, I tried to heal alone in my room. Yeah. But I wanted to heal from trauma that came from other humans. So that's why I wanted to heal alone. And that's why I could never have been healed alone, because I needed to visit the broken places.
But how did you find, I know exactly what you're talking about. How do you find let's call it courage or curiosity, when you knew that, or I don't know if you realized at some point, I can't go, I can't heal that in my room, but to make that, because it takes, like, if you've been hurt in relationship, and the natural is like to separate yourself from that, what brings you back? What was the it feels to me it takes so much courage, because this is exactly like facing the fear.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think every healing journey is very individual. In my case, I can't overestimate, or I can't see a line of my mental and wise decisions. What I can see is that when my healing journey became effective in my experience, I started using touch and hands-on, and let it be a massage from a friend. But I experienced touch of real bodies with my skin in a safe and pleasurable way. And that's not a sexual way, it's just a way of feeling safe and lying and being touched. And from this information, something started to grow again, to connect again. And today I have the feeling that I just have to keep breathing. I just have to be open enough for learning from my life, learning from trauma, learning from every contact I have. So for example, for the moment, in this very moment, I'm aware of, or I try not to contract that much in my face muscles as I would have done 10 years ago, when I felt so unsafe with other people that I started smiling and talking a lot and very high in my voice. I'm aware of that. So I'm using our conversation for an inch more of feeling. And it's more being permanently as open as I can, knowing that we are all experts in closing. And that's not a problem. It's just this ongoing following what my life offers to me in the best way I can. And this is more how I would describe it, instead of realizing, oh my God, from now on, I have to face real contact. But I think my life gave me contacts, for example, to partners or to new friends, in the best timing ever. There was something of me going into this opportunity somehow knowing that it doesn't come out of the blue, but because there is a timing in me facing this challenge. And another thing for me is being okay, and I think we talked about it, and we can never talk about it enough, being okay with learning. Being okay with being a student, meaning being okay with making mistakes all day long. And this is very important, because as long as I wanted to be a good student, I failed so much more. And this was a conscious moment of me getting in touch with my anger. And I think it's anger for everybody. It's anger of, do I really have, after so much shit that I went through, do I really have to waste my time with trying to do it right? Or can I stop trying to do it right, and instead of that, focusing my anger towards real self-love? So my anger helped me overcoming this cultural neurosis of trying to make it good and right. And from then on, it became way easier, because then I had a friendship and I knew, sorry, I messed up, and I felt ashamed, but I didn't feel unworthy for this friendship. So this was a shift. I think it really comes from anger, because it's something of clear boundaries. If you try to do it right, you don't have repaired your boundaries yet, because doing it right, it came from outside. So say stop to this motto.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things that are really important that I just want to say again, because because that's a realization that I had for myself, and also put in the program, that, you know, connecting to our anger is so crucial to create I don't know, to get into change. I feel like once I'm in contact, once I'm allowing my anger to face without being afraid of it, or whatever, you know, it's like once I'm able to get in contact with it, something shifts in a way that's beneficial for me. You know, there's so much fear about, like, oh, you know, it's like when I'm angry, we're so much like, oh, you shouldn't be angry. There's so much stuff around it, you know, but I truly feel that anger is a very actually quite, it can be a constructive force, not just destructive, if it's conscious.
Yeah. And it's really like the same as with fear. We are not talking about anger when we associate choleric and hysteric screaming. These are symptoms of suppressed anger, of perverted anger, because I can't get rid of it. I can just suppress it. So I think in a collective level, we as humans are deeply traumatized by the symptoms of what we call anger. But these are not symptoms of real anger, of the life force. These are symptoms of us having rejected our anger in the right moment. So anger is a pure essence of life force and of self-love. Because if you are not angry, you can't protect anything that you love. And at the latest, when you have children, when you have a cat that you want to protect, whatsoever, be aware of your anger, because it's there for you. And if you suppress anger, you will miss the point where it's really needed. So it's really about love and self-love. There is no, I think, energetic and strong definition of love and self-love possible without really owning anger. And this is also a collective healing task, because everybody is afraid of everybody's anger. And that's why we nourish the problem instead of the solution. And every moment that I feel, oh, whoa, my anger is red, my anger is hot, my anger is breathing, my anger is density, my anger is intensity, my anger is creativity. Every moment, every second of that heals some gram of the collective trauma that we have to run away from our anger. And there is no other way to become peaceful as mankind or to stop war. There is no other way but visiting this wounded place and visiting this wounded emotion and recognize we misunderstood it.
Yeah.
We made it turn into a problem, but it is our solution.
I had a very profound experience, like body experience with, just to focus on what you said from my experience during my years of becoming energy healer. I had a therapist that I worked with, every week or every other week. And so when it came to anger, like I was a person before that, I'm not angry, or I would break into sadness before, so completely disconnected from anger because of the fear that I had about it. But once I worked with her, it's like it was such a shift in what anger is, because she invited me just let it flow through my body, just feel it in my body instead of wanting to get it out of my body.
Yeah.
That's when the destruction happens. It's like when we want to get rid of it, so then we're like, it's like an energetic thing, it's like you throw it at somebody, and then they get angry, and then you have more permission to be more angry and throw it out. But once I've owned it, it's like let it really flow into that body. Like that was it was so healing, because then I felt that life force, that was mine. I was like, whoa,
yeah.
I'm really having this power,
Yeah.
So that was a moment that described what we were saying, and from my own experience. And ever since, I love anger. I love working with it. I love when people are angry. Not when they're putting it at me, but like in the work with people. It's like when I work with people now, it's like I love when they're touching, when they're able to be that courageous, actually, to let anger be seen, and guiding them to own it. That was for me very, very strong.
Yeah, and in the beginning I talked about tolerating a higher level of energy, and this is especially true for people getting in touch with anger when they learn to suppress it, because in the beginning, in most cases, it's not pleasure that I'm angry. It's me training to tolerate that I'm angry, not because of the anger, but because of the intensity of power. And it's like, if my body experiences it, I believe it. The moment I really own my anger is the moment where I'm convinced that I'm strong.
Yeah.
And this is so contradictory to my self-image in this culture that it might be something like, it can't be true, so let's throw it out. And it's really a training, containing high levels of energy, meaning being alive when when you are sick, being alive when you are sad, but being alive, high levels of energy. It's a matter of training, because unlearning or not tolerating these high levels of energy, it also has been a matter of learning and of training every day, and of imitating and of copying from others. But in the end, it didn't come from inside. It somehow wasn't voluntary. And the other thing is, the beautiful thing, when you are angry, and I'm witnessing you,
Hmm.
I somehow get in my subconsciousness, it's safe to be angry. And that's so healing for me. And the next moment I'm triggered with my anger, I think, Avi survived. So let's try, maybe I survive it too. So there's something where we always contribute to collective healing, if we want or not, just when we are talking or dealing with our individual stuff. And I say collective, and I know, okay, Ilan and Avi, that's not the collective mankind, but it is. But because it's the same principle. We are not as macrocosm of mankind something else. We are not in the internet something else. We are always working in fields of nervous systems, in our microcosm of our body and in our macrocosm. And we are deeply, deeply sensitive for the somatic information that we transmit to each other. And when I transmit that I stop breathing, you can't feel safe with me, because your nervous system says, okay, Ilan isn't breathing, something here isn't okay. Otherwise, she would be breathing. Right. So we are, and this is the strong thing, I think, around communication, and way stronger than words.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Breathing out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm feeling quite relaxed at the moment. I'm not sure how you're feeling.
Yeah. I also feel nourished and peaceful.
Me too.
Like being full and connected with inner substance. I don't feel lost or mental or stressed. And that's interesting, because we talked about words not dissociating from the body. And it's like my energy system is it's quite okay with how we're exploring.
Yeah. Wonderful transmission.
And hopefully inviting more and more and more of a field of being routined with talking about wounds and healing. I think every conversation is worth being tried out, because everything nourishes the field beyond the concrete conversation. And this is what gives me so much hope for the future, is that people start talking about things, knowing and embodying that it's not about the words.
Yeah, and for me, my hope is that we all find our own ways of expressing ourselves fully.
Yeah. And whatever. I think this creative expression, it comes up naturally if we stop blocking ourselves, because we are innate creative. It's like, this is being alive. And it's like, in the end, it's as natural as keep breathing. You are meant to breathe.
And the key for me in that surrendering is give ourselves permission to make mistakes, to mess up.
Yeah.
And what I love about, it's like the channel drawing process that how I'm teaching it, is that actually there's much, it's wonderful if you mess up, because something else can come through that, not always, but like it can, you open the channel for some deeper things that can come through not controlling. And when we use the collective to like talk about a drawing, or it's like receiving a drawing, and everybody says like what comes up in their being looking at it, there's magic happen. I mean, I call it magic because I know where it's coming from. It's like this collective wisdom that comes through and creates a fuller picture that is healing by itself. It's I just really love that way of expressing and making mistakes and learning how good it is to make mistakes in some way.
And there is, I want to like for our closure, I want to invite us to a challenge. And that is that, of course, it's beautiful to make mistakes. We all know it. We all say yes to it. And then we might get back into the everyday trap of trying to avoid mistakes. The fastest way out of that is planning mistakes. And I feel right at the moment, I feel pretty excited about, okay, I will plan a mistake. I will plan something that I do better than I could have done it. If I'm not focusing on making it in the wrong way or doing it wrong, I will be my own trickster and won't get the point. So there is something around losing fear of making mistakes that I hack in the moment that I'm doing it on purpose, doing a mistake. For example, I was terrified by disappointing people. And the first times I disappointed people without having planned it. And then the moment when I disappointed somebody again and was like, okay, I will do it on purpose just once, but in order to prove that I'm stronger than disappointing somebody and that I'm in charge around disappointing and not disappointing. And I was so uplifted by this experience that regarding mistakes, if this is a strong trigger for you, do it on purpose. There is no other way of getting rid of this fata morgana that a mistake is a problem. It's beautiful, but you will experience the beauty so much faster if you do it being willing to go into hell.
Yeah, I love that challenge. So maybe like whoever is watching this later, commit to, maybe you want to commit or whatever. Doing mistakes. It might be
something so small, but on purpose doing a mistake. It gives you a sense of freedom in a more direct way than trying to do everything right.
Yeah. And I would wonder, I'm curious, like if somebody does this, if they can share their experience, and perhaps that can happen in the Facebook group or however, we'll see. But
the somatic sensations, how is your energy level after having done this mistake on purpose? Really?
Great.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's really going to the edge. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for this time together, and feeling very nourished as well.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
Oh, connected. Woo! Not separate anymore. Trauma matrix healing for all of us.